Yeah. So you have, like my little nerve that is like my one thing I don't touch as a lawyer, which is subject to deals. I won't touch them. There's a few lawyers out there across the country who are happy to kind of take on that risk, not just professionally, but like it's risky from both the borrower and the lender spot, right? Like the seller who's selling to you on subject to is really putting a lot of faith and credit.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pros Show, where we interview real estate investing professionals from coast to coast, as well as the service providers that serve the real estate investing industry. Our goal is simple: share what's working now to help you improve and scale your business to the next level and meet the pros that can help you get there. Real Estate Pros is powered by Investor Fuel, America's leader in helping real estate investors and professionals build the business you need to live the life you've always dreamed of. Let's start today's show. Property insurance for real estate investors doesn't have to be difficult, but it does need to be there to protect you when you need it. MyInvestorInsurance.com not only provides insurance at 15 to 30% cheaper than traditional agencies, it's built specifically for real estate investors like you. You can set up an account in about 2 minutes, get quotes on properties, turn on and turn off insurance for your fix and flip or rental properties in around 2 minutes without having to talk to anyone directly, all through our portal. There's no better way or faster way to make sure you've got the coverage you need to protect you, and no more lengthy policies either. Once you're set up, you're billed monthly and prorated by the day for however long your policy is active. It's powered by MSI, the third largest independent MGA, with 1.5 million customers and more than $1 billion in cumulative premiums written. Get set up today in about 2 minutes at myinvestorinsurance.com/fuel.
Hey folks, welcome back to the show. Today's guest, Bonnie Galam, is an investor and attorney out of New Jersey. She built an 8-figure portfolio before the age of 30 and then got sued, which prompted her to start a law firm to help investors proactively protect their assets, structure their businesses, and plan for long-term wealth. Welcome to the show, Bonnie.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, when we talk about scaling a business in the real estate space, one of the things that people often don't think about until they're up against it is the legal arm of it, right?
Yes, guilty as charged.
Now, for folks who are starting out, they've got so many ways to get started, right? They're oftentimes, maybe putting the cart before the horse and not thinking about the structure of their business.
Yeah, I see that all the time. I think there's a lot of eagerness, and it's not misplaced to kind of get that first property or project under contract and like get it going. And then it's like, okay, once I've made it for real that I'm actually doing this business or I'm actually profitable in this business, then I'll go ahead at some point and like focus on the legal side of things. And
Yeah.
maybe, I'll see people involved with lawyers, maybe just as like a one-off on that transaction, but rarely from a strategic standpoint until either they've grown or they've landed in legal hot water.
And that's one of these things where it's like until you've got, I'll compare it to taxes. Until you've got a tax bill, you're not thinking about taxes. And
Mhm.
until you're not got a tricky legal situation to navigate, you're not thinking about the legalities of it. For folks who may be scaling and maybe they've got a couple single family properties, what are some common mistakes that you see people making when they're on that journey?
So I think probably the most common mistake I see is title. A lot of times, my early scaling investors will be using, and understandably so in some circumstances, more traditional residential financing, right? They're house hacking or they're using FHA loans or they're just using secondary vacation homes to purchase these properties, which oftentimes prohibit them from purchasing it in an LLC. And then they come to me, a few years down the line, and they're like, hey, Bonnie, I've got all this, portfolio that I've built up. I'm ready to move it into an LLC. And sometimes it's a simple thing. Sometimes we need lender approval. And sometimes I'm also licensed in Pennsylvania. Like Pennsylvania is going to charge a transfer tax on that. And so it's not quite as simple as just saying, oh, we'll just do a $1 deed. It's like, yeah, plus paying, the Department of Treasury over in Pennsylvania, often tens of thousands of dollars. And so while it's easy to kind of be a little bit short-sighted as we're kind of chomping up individual properties, the longer term implications of that can actually be a bit more expensive. Now, sometimes people are like, I'm fine being without the LLC, but like you sometimes you got to make that choice up front. And if you don't have someone who's kind of strategically guiding you to like the pros and cons and what it might look like, three chess moves down the road.
Stop living on an island and join the #1 mastermind in America for professional real estate investors. Investor Fuel is a community of hundreds of the nation's top investors working together to build stronger businesses and better lives. In addition to the amazing community of real estate investors acting as a board of advisors for one another, Investor Fuel members have access to 100% funding on purchase and repairs for our members only, a health insurance program, and benefits and discounts that more than pays for the membership of most of our members, meaning it's actually costing you money to not be a member of Investor Fuel. If you're looking to scale your business and build a business that allows you to live the life of your dreams, please visit investorfuel.com today and book a call with our team.
Then you may be stuck in a position that you don't want to be in.
Yeah, and you talk about guiding you. I think one of the things that maybe sometimes people have a fair degree of caution is they're thinking, well, who do I go to? Who do I reach out to from a legal side that's going to understand real estate? And, what's a fair price to pay? How can people find, someone who's going to provide them a consultative approach and, at a price which they can afford, quite frankly?
Yeah, no, it's definitely tricky. And I mean, that was a big reason why I had started my practice 8 years ago, was to kind of be that type of attorney that not only understood the legal side of being a real estate investor, but the actual business side of things. Like for me, like I hated having an attorney who billed me by the hour, and then I would get to the closing table and have some surprise number that they wanted to get paid. And so like I always quote my clients a flat fee up front, and they understand how that gets paid before and after closing. The In terms of affordability, it really will depend. Of course, you never want to be spending more on like the lawyer than like the down payment. You'd be surprised if you actually look at a HUD. Oftentimes the lawyers are like the cheapest one at the table, especially when you like lender fees and things like that. Have you ever seen like a hard money lender, like how much their fees are? And you're often paying for their lawyer as well. Like these things, just like real estate is not a place to be penny wise and pound cheap. And when it comes to investing in legal, it's one of those things where it's because as investors, like we want to see ROI, right?
Pivoting a bit here, Bonnie, when folks are looking at, evaluating their bottom line, right? And they're trying to determine, well, okay, I've got this number of properties. How much should I be budgeting for legal expenses? Is there any kind of, feedback or guidelines that you could give folks as far as, hey, this is maybe what you should budget on an annual basis for legal expenses if you've got, let's say, 10 properties or less?
So no, and not because I'm trying to be difficult and being an attorney about this. It really does depend in large part on a few different things, right? Number one is, what is your own risk tolerance? You could say, I just want to have an umbrella policy and never deal with a lawyer. Would I suggest that? Probably not. The way I look at asset protection is that there's two sides. There's defensive, which protects you where things go wrong. That's where like LLCs and insurance pop in. And if you just want to say, hey, I just want to do the insurance, fine. They kind of protect you in similar ways. Offensive is things like your business processes, your leases, your partnership agreements, things like that. If you don't have a partner, you don't have to pay for a partnership agreement. If you've just got, a single family property in one market, then yeah, like my New Jersey clients, they pay me one time for a lease and they can use that until there's like a major change in the law. But if you're buying single family properties in New Jersey and in Texas and Wyoming and in Iowa, like you're going to have to pay lawyers to get you up and running in all these different states. There's not a lot that's translatable across the states. And so I think a lot of it comes down to the type of investor you are and you want to be. If you don't want partners, then you don't have to pay for partnership agreements. If you don't want to be paying for a bunch of different leases, then stick to one market. And so on top of like, what is your own personal risk tolerance? Like I have clients who want, 50 different levels of trusts. That's not how I operate my practice. They can go pay another lawyer, $30,000 to do something that may or may not work in New Jersey. For me, my approach is like, keep it simple, stupid.
I would like to ask you somewhat selfishly about, for folks who are getting involved in creative deals. I think there's a lot of people who are interested in,
Sure.
cash for keys and coming, with little money down and assumptions. If we could dive into just one of these, for folks who are looking at loan assumptions and subject to, and putting properties into trusts and et cetera.
Yeah.
What's your feedback in general? Of course, we can't give out legal advice to everybody, but what's your feedback in general for some of these creative approaches and what people might have to, be careful of?
Yeah. So you have, like my like little nerve that is like my one thing I don't touch as a lawyer, which is subject to deals. I won't touch them. There's a few lawyers out there across the country who are happy to kind of take on that risk.
If you're looking for consistent, high-quality leads, look no further than Investor Machine. Investor Machine isn't just another agency, it's the most sophisticated, data-driven lead generation company on the planet for real estate investors, and serves the role of being not just a lead generator for your business, but a marketing partner that is helping you achieve your goals along the way. Go to investormachine.com to learn more and schedule a call with our team today.
Not just professionally, but like it's risky from both the borrower and the lender spot, right? Like the seller who's selling to you on subject to is really putting a lot of faith and credit in you to make sure that like you're not going to ruin their lives and their credit by actually not following through on the subject to. You are knowingly putting them in violation of their mortgage loan. And so for me as an attorney, it's one of the very few red lines I have. A lot of times as an attorney, I'll say, look, it's your risk, it's your money. If you understand what you're going into, then like I'll be ride or die with you. I have a client right now who refuses to get title insurance on any property he buys. Would I do that? No. But like he signs a waiver and we move along with it because he's, an educated investor and I'm fine with that. On the other hand, with subject to, I feel like I'm kind of the monkey in the middle facilitating a deal that it's not necessarily illegal, but it's knowingly putting the seller into breach. And a lot of times these sellers are not
Yeah.
represented by their own lawyer, and they're kind of just taking everyone else's word that like things are kosher, and
Right.
they're not quite. On the other hand, things like lease options or seller finance or um, rent to own, like whatever those types of situations are, they can be done nicely and ethically and legally, and I do them all the time, but subject to is the one that, like, I don't. And I've talked with Pace Morby about it, like, it's one of those things where it's like agree to disagree. There's plenty of people out there who are doing it, and they're doing it ethically, and that's fine. I'm just like, as a lawyer, I'm like, it's just not worth the malpractice risks for me, and that's just the line that I've drawn in this.
And I hear it. And you mentioned seller financing. And what's interesting to me is I think that there's a lot of people right now that are beginning to realize that there's this opportunity in seller financing and making seller finance offers, not just as an investor, but also as someone who may be looking to buy their homestead or their first property. Because you've got properties right now throughout the country, definitely in the Sun Belt. I think it's a little different in New Jersey, but definitely in the Sun Belt where these properties could be sitting for months, and sellers don't necessarily want to lower their price, right? But if you have someone coming in who maybe has rebuilding credit or not established credit, but they've got, some money down and they are willing to make payments directly to the seller or through a servicing company, I think that there's a lot of people right now who would be interested in that. Because like the pitch is worst case scenario, if I'm doing seller financing and my a buyer is unable to pay, I'm going to get the property back and I can relist it on the market. And otherwise, it's just going to be sitting there vacant, right?
Yeah, 100%, and I do tons of seller finance, like, that is probably, like if there was one thing that, like, I rank good on SEO and I do a ton of, it is seller financing because it truly is one of those great, like, win-win scenarios. The buyer can getting it into a property, and the seller oftentimes can still get the number that they want, and on the commercial end of things, there's tons of tax benefits, right? Of a seller not receiving, a huge amount of capital gain all in 1 year. It's a great negotiating point, and I hope it's something that continues to grow because it really is often a very win-win. I have it all the time also between family members. Grandma goes into a family, into a nursing home, or someone passes away, and people are able to kind of just buy the property off market among family members in a market that, frankly, as you know, especially here in the Northeast, is really hard for first time home buyers to kind of break into,
Yeah, it's huge.
especially in competitive neighborhoods. Um, and so I'm a huge fan of seller finance. You'll never, if subject to is over here, then we've got seller finance way all the way over here. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around like the regulations
What it,
around it and what can or can't be done. But like two thumbs up on seller finance.
Do you think at all, and I don't necessarily know that this will be true, but I know that just because of the price of homes and, the acquisition cost, even for a property that's going to need some rehab in New Jersey, can be, I mean, twice to three times as much as what it's going to be in the Sun Belt for sure.
Mhm.
Do you think people on all sides, both buyer and seller, may start to look at some of these strategies, even if they're not looking at it from an investment lens, but just like, hey, I got to try to find a way to buy a home and I don't have, you know,
If you're a new or newer real estate investor looking to launch or grow your real estate investing business, please check out Investor Fuel Club. It's a coaching community, but unlike anything you've ever seen before. And you can actually partner with members of our mastermind from coast to coast on deals right in your market. There's no better opportunity to build a consistent business than to literally partner with pros to help you avoid costly mistakes, avoid the need for capital to do deals, and help you eliminate your fears as you're starting your business. Learn more about Investor Fuel Club at investorfuel.com/club.
hundreds of thousands of dollars to put down in a down payment, and I'm not going to be able to qualify, even if I necessarily did.
Yeah, it's hard. I think here in the Northeast, maybe a little bit less so just because there are a lot of qualifiers. And we don't really have a buyer issue as much as a supply issue. Like we need more sellers. Um,
Yeah.
the on the flips, but that's not to say like I'm up here and I do seller finance all the time and I'm one attorney. Um, and so it's definitely something that's out there. I think the bigger thing that is encouraging a lot of people to do seller financing is the interest rates, right? The
Yeah.
We can make numbers work that otherwise would not work when we can play with interest rate in a really substantial way. The interest rates right now are really high. And so people who could not be able to afford a mortgage at 6.5% can very much afford that interest rate at 3.5% or 0% in a way that for, interfamily sales, they're fine giving each other 0%. There's some taxable issues that we've got to go into there, but like that's a whole other conversation. It is a doable transaction. And even if we do half of market rate, that suddenly makes us a very doable transaction. And it doesn't always have to be a 30-year mortgage. I think sometimes sellers have this idea like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to be collecting this money for 30 years. Well, I'm like, well, what if we did a 5-year balloon or a 2-year balloon? Something where we can go in, maybe make some improvements and do a refi after, a short period of time. And maybe in that, the interim, the interest rates will come down a bit, or like, I just plan to have more money then.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many reasons why someone might consider seller financing. You hit on all of them, and I think it's not just one avatar person that's going to be doing it. Like we
Sure.
we talked about, it's investors, it's people looking for their homestead. It may be people looking for an additional property that may be their segue into real estate investing. I would like to pivot a bit here, though. Ask you about the tax foreclosure space. I've had another investor on the show who was explaining to me that there's a strategy where potentially people who are investing in tax foreclosures can actually assume the role of the government. And, whereas typically the government would be foreclosing on properties, that there's a strategy where certain investors can assume that responsibility and either foreclose directly themselves, or they can, give this person an extended period of time to kind of make up their delinquent taxes. Have you heard of anything like that?
Yeah, it definitely exists. The process varies obviously greatly from state to state. I'll just touch on New Jersey. I'm not a foreclosure attorney. It's not what I specialize in. I have purchased foreclosure properties myself as an investor, but generally speaking, the way that it would work is almost like a reverse auction. The New Jersey process will be like, say someone owes $10,000 in property taxes. You say, and the interest rate is whatever it is in New Jersey, call it 8%. You would say, hey, I'll buy that debt. And you basically bid down on the interest rate. And a lot of these um, tax liens will go for 0% interest, right? Like, why wouldn't I pay $10,000 to potentially have the right to foreclose on a $200,000 property? Like, everyone's going to do that math all day, every day. Um, but the issue often becomes the timeline on that. Like, it is not something where it's like, "Oh, I bought this tax lien and I have to wait 90 days or whatever, and I can go foreclose on it." It is often years and years before you can go ahead and foreclose on the
Mm.
property. And so it's not a fast process, but is it a process to affordably get into some properties? Yes. But, like, I will admit to you, oftentimes what happens is that there is some sort of a payback, right? And if they pay you back, then the debt is wiped and you don't get the property and you don't get any interest. And so, like,
Yeah.
worst case scenarios, you just get your money back. The best case scenario is that you're able to go through the foreclosure process and get this property. Not necessarily for, I don't mean to speak about properties in a way like there are definitely people who like foreclosure is not a good thing. I don't mean to be insensitive about, the realities of the person who's going through foreclosure. Um, but it's definitely a method that can work. And yes, at least here in New Jersey, a property tax lien is like it supersedes even a mortgage, right? And so you do step into that position where the government previously was. If a municipality owned that tax lien before, then you are now that owner of that lien in that position.
We are coming up on time here, Bonnie. Any new projects that you're working on? And then as well, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you or your team?
Yeah, so projects that I'm working on right now, it's been like a hot minute since I've purchased a property. It's probably about a year and a half, 2 years at this point. And I think some of it is like there's this just dearth of things. I'll admit a lot of the properties we've bought over the years outside of foreclosures have just been like things that are sitting on like Zillow. And there's not a lot of things just sitting on Zillow around us right now. And so I'm actually starting a small little direct mail campaign. There's some properties that I just drive by all the time and I'm like, oh, I would love to flip this. I'm kind of in the mood for a flip right. Frankly, I don't need more residential rentals. And so I'm hoping to, maybe get a flip under contract by summer if any of these direct mail campaigns pan out.
All right. All right. Bonnie, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for the time.
Thanks so much. And you can find me on my website that I'll give for the show notes.
Thanks for joining us for today's Real Estate Pros Show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing for your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. If you're interested in joining us as a guest of this show, please visit investorfuel.com/pros to apply. You can also check the show notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and much more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next show.